Hi everyone. Hope you're doing all right. It's been a while since I posted a video about what's been going on in my life, despite multiple promises to do so. Instead, I guess I've been busy making rage bait slop about why the movies you like are bad, actually, because YouTube definitely doesn't have enough of that content already. Look, I'm sorry. I had to make a peace offering to the mighty algorithm, and it was either that or my firstborn son. But hey, it's the end of the year. I figured I owed folks at least a short update. And there are some thoughts I'd like to share before we're too deep into 2025. I spent some of this fall working on a very, very long video about my life experiences this year because a lot of interesting and crazy things happened, but then it spiraled completely out of control, and I realized that I couldn't tell the whole story warts and all without making some people with very large wallets very angry. I still fully intend to tell this story because it is a good one, but only in a controlled and anonymous fashion that will not risk anyone being sued or harassed. So instead of that video, or series of videos, for now, here are just a few closing remarks on the last year. It is, of course, arbitrary that we as human beings tend to divide our lives and our conceptions of ourselves so cleanly into neat little packages of 12 months. Every new day that we wake up is as good an opportunity for changes, resolutions, and personal growth as any other. If you don't quit smoking in January, there's always February. After all, it's not like we're robots that are factory reset at midnight every New Year's Day with the latest, greatest updates.
The only constant in life is change.
But then again, maybe there is some truth to the concept of new year, new me. At least here in the Northern Hemisphere, the fact that the new year falls where it does seems no accident. I don't need to tell anyone in Boston how dark and cold outside it's been lately. It's harder to see people in the winter, and while it's still a city, everything has shut down a little bit, giving us more time than usual to sit with ourselves and think about the previous year. Maybe even how we want to make things better the next time around. So as I sit here alone in front of this camera, how did 2024 go for me? I'm sure someone who knows me wants to know. After all, I just quit my software job. This was the year where I was going to strike out on my own and get things done, working on a bunch of new songs and videos and either making music a real career for me or seeing how far I got trying. The answer to the same question about 2023 had been easy. It was one of the worst years of my life, much of it eaten away by a breakup that ended up being more unpleasant than a lot of divorces I've seen and just about as time-consuming, though at least no lawyers were involved. A big stretch between February and September of that year was pretty much a steady march of unadulterated misery. 2024, though? It's hard to know where to start. In many ways, this has been an amazing year. I got to travel all around the US and countries throughout the world on unexpected invitations from my old college a cappella group, the Dins, who were twice in need of replacement singers, and also who got famous this year. Even after the touring was done, back home here, I got to join them in singing the national anthem at a Sox game in Fenway, which was unbelievably cool. As someone who memorizes music pretty quickly and can flex around to a few different voice parts, the work suited me, and the free travel and performance experience was, of course, stellar. I remain grateful from the bottom of my heart for these opportunities. When not touring, I caught a bunch of awesome live music from artists I thought I'd never be able to see, like Unwound and Black Country New Road, and reconnected with some old friends in very touching ways. My 5th year college reunion and the 45th anniversary reunion weekend for the Dins, also held this year, were pretty much nothing but fun throughout. Along the journey, I also put out a couple videos I'm pretty proud of, and released a music single that performed better than pretty much anything I'd ever done before. It wasn't as much creative output as I'd wanted, but I am happy for it nonetheless, and of course I'm always working on the next big thing. But in other ways, parts of this year have been just terrible. A cold I picked up while traveling in January quickly turned into the worst health crisis of my life, as I've spoken about on this channel before. And after months of misdiagnoses and 4 failed courses of antibiotics, I ended up needing neck surgery, always a fun prospect for a singer, at the beginning of April. Now, thankfully, it resolved very well, much of it due to some very generous family friends taking care of me after the procedure. But that stretch of time between January and April is probably the darkest and loneliest period of my entire life. And if you know me well, unfortunately, that's saying something. Also, around and after my summer travels ended, some people I'd been close with in the past, completely unrelated to each other, decided to all vent their pent-up homicidal rage toward me at once. At one point, I actually ended up fleeing my apartment for 2 weeks out of concern for my physical safety. That was great, and so were the walls of text that accompanied each blow-up. You're a coward, through and through. If I see you ever again, I'm slapping you. Have a shitty f***ing life, you cuck. I'm sure you'll agree that that last one isn't exactly Joyce, but it did make for some exciting reading when I was sent it at 5 a.m. local time. Maybe unsurprisingly then, my year ended off with me feeling a lot more paranoid and isolated than I'd hoped for. For the past few months, I've pretty much been holed up in my apartment working on very big creative projects, rehabilitating my singing voice after the whole surgery thing, and doing not much else. I say this all not just to complain or seem ungrateful, although I am a very ungrateful person and do love to complain. No, I'm saying this because in the age of social media, many of us find ourselves constantly bludgeoned with a non-stop stream of happiness and humble brags from friends and influencers at exactly a time when access to good mental health care is out of reach for so many in the US and the world. And yeah, I've made enough happy posts this year that I know I'm part of the problem. You don't exactly need to be a narcissist or resent your friends to look at all this amid some personal crisis. Imagine that you're the only one not having fun and continue to self-isolate and spiral. Unfortunately, this noxious cloud of toxic positivity often spills into the real world too, or maybe was always there to begin with, in places where vulnerability is misunderstood as a weakness rather than a strength. At the risk of repeating myself, I went to college at a place where at the time the most negative socially acceptable answer to "how are you" was fine. At the very same time, on multiple occasions I found myself visiting classmates and friends in inpatient rehab centers after crises completely derailed their lives. You would never have known it from looking at their smiling faces while passing them between classes. I knew that I wasn't the only one with this story, and yet it kept happening. Nothing of value was done to change things. Very early on, it occurred to me that in always trying to be nice or maybe pleasant to each other, our society seemed to have stopped actually being kind and supportive. And I always had a problem with that. Look, I'll be honest, we are over a year into my year off work, and for those keeping score, I'm still not a big shot musician. The odds are slim that I'll ever be. I obviously knew all of this going into things, and it doesn't mean that I'm gonna stop trying. But eventually, before 2025 ends, I'm almost certainly gonna have to get a day job again. My odds of achieving similar glory and adulation as a software engineer, not that I've ever been looking for that, are probably even remoter than becoming a rock star. But if there is one thing that I want to be remembered for when it comes to this period of my life, if I get to have that, years after I'm gone, I want it to be that I was a guy, not the guy, but a guy who wasn't afraid to look the world in the eye through a camera and tell people when he was having a bad day, even if it meant making a fool of himself. If occasionally sharing my struggles makes just one more person more likely to also open up to their loved ones about their own troubles, then it's all been worth it for me. This is why I'm proud to be able to tell you that even if it looks like I had the absolute time of my life throughout 2024, and of course at times I did, this past year actually had its share of extremes in both directions. Actually, it was nothing but extremes, and I'm completely exhausted. Travel is great, and I never get sick of it, but to be happy, you kind of need to have a life when you're back home too. I haven't really had one of those since about late 2022 when things first started falling apart for me. In 2025, with the limited time and money I have left in this liminal space in my life, that needs to be more of a focus going forward than it's been. As for what's next in the near future, well, in a development that is simultaneously more and less surprising to me every time it happens, I've somehow been invited back for yet another singing tour with the Dins across the US for most of January. It should be a great break from the usual existential dread, and I'm really looking forward to it. After that, you can probably expect a couple more videos and hopefully a couple more songs too from me before my very long year off finally ends. I have been keeping very busy lately with a couple projects in the works. Working on that video script about my travels this past summer, using reinforcement learning bots to help balance the rules out for a new board game I invented with a friend recently, and yes, working on original music. And eventually each of those things will turn into some sort of finished product. And even if I found that my original goal for myself of one video per week that I set in 2023 is pretty impossible to keep up alongside my sanity, I do promise that I'll be right here keeping you updated along the whole way. Other than that, please consider subscribing to this channel if you want to hear more from me. Check out the description for other social media links, and I hope you have a great beginning to your 2025. I'm gonna get back to memorizing music for that tour now, so stay healthy, please be there for your loved ones, and see you next time.